Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is going to be a reading wrap up for the month of August 2022. If you're interested in seeing the books that I read this month, please stick around. As I said in my introduction, this video is going to be all about the books that I read in August 2022. I'm actually going to be talking about a couple books that I also read in July 2022. I was not expecting to film this video today. The opportunity just kind of presented itself, so I'm a little bit of a hot mess. I've got like rugs everywhere because I've been cleaning, so don't mind. So I want to start actually talking about a few books that I read in July. When I filmed my July reading recap, it was like, I think it was like the 29th of the month or something like that. So I had a few days left in the month. I was currently reading The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han, and I was pretty sure I was going to be able to finish this book. And then I was planning on starting August by reading the rest of the Summer I Turned Pretty series, along with Hook, Line, and Sinker, which is the second book in the It Happened One Summer series. That was my plan going into August. What ended up happening is that I finished this book the day that I filmed my July reading recap on the 29th. And then on the 30th, I picked up the sequel, It's Not Summer Without You, and I read it in a day. And then on the following day, I picked up the next book, We'll Always Have Summer, and I finished it. So in the last 3 days of July, I read all 3 of these books, the Summer I Turned Pretty series. So I ended up getting these, through these really quickly. It is a young adult series, so I'm not totally shocked that I read them pretty quickly. I rated them all pretty good. I think it was 4 stars, and then I think I rated the last one 4.5 stars. The last one was definitely my favorite. I don't know if it was because like it was a culmination of the series or because we finally got some of Conrad's perspective in the last book, but that one was definitely my favorite one. So I was really happy to have finished this series at the end of July. So going into August, that left me with the opportunity to start out the month by reading Hook, Line, and Sinker, which, like I said before, is the second book in the It Happened One Summer series by Tessa Bailey. Basically, the first book in the series is about a girl who has to move to a town. It's kind of like a fish out of water kind of thing, and she ends up meeting somebody and falling in love. In that book, she does bring her sister with her. And the second book, Hook, Line, and Sinker, is all about the sister, her point of view. So I was really interested in reading this book. I loved It Happened One Summer. I gave that 5 stars. It was definitely a 5-star read for me. And I actually really liked her sister, Hannah. So I was excited to read Hannah's story. And I ended up absolutely loving this. Sometimes you get a little nervous reading a second book in a series, or like, especially if it's like a duality like this, and this was not disappointing whatsoever. It totally lived up to the first book for me, and I ended up rating Hook, Line, and Sinker 5 stars. After I read Hook, Line, and Sinker, I decided to get into my August book for my Instagram challenge. I talk a lot about my Instagram challenge. It's a very simple challenge. I basically put on my stories that I was looking for book recommendations, and every time I got recommendation for a book that I hadn't read yet, I put it into one of the months for 2022. So basically from April all the way until December 2022, I had one book each month that I want to read as a part of my Instagram challenge. And so for August, the recommendation came from a fellow planner gal that I follow on Instagram, Delilah, and she recommended A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow by Laura Taylor Namey. And I had never heard of this. This is a young adult romance. I'm not super familiar with young adult romance, so it's definitely not something I think I would have found if it hadn't been recommended to me. I was definitely intrigued by the fact that it's part of Reese's Young Adult Book Club. I have read a lot of the Reese Witherspoon Book Club books, and I tend to really like them, so that was definitely really definitely made me even more curious for this. And this was so, I loved this so much. Like, I just loved this book so much. I've mentioned when I've talked about this book before that I'm also Cuban, like the main character. And so it's really exciting to see, or, you know, have a book with a Cuban main character, or, you know, a Latinx main character. There's a lot of talk about family and food, and those things are very, very important in Cuban culture. And so it was just sweet to read about someone who has like that Cuban ancestry and background like I do. And I really enjoyed the book as a whole. I liked that, you know, this gal was basically just discovering what she wanted for herself and how she struggled with that in trying to basically balance that with like familial expectations, or honestly like expectations she had put on herself because of her love for her family. So this was a really, really sweet book. I ended up giving this 5 stars. I really, really liked it. Next, I read a book by Colleen Hoover. I have a bit of a struggle with Colleen Hoover. I feel like I either am very lukewarm about her books or I absolutely love her books. The first book from Colleen Hoover that I read was Verity. I have not been shy about the fact that I really did not like the ending of Verity. I did also read a really incredible book by her, Ugly Love. I really enjoyed that book. That was a 5-star read for me. But then I got into a few of her books in a row that I just felt were okay. I read It Ends With Us. I read Reminders of Him. And I want to say I read another one, but I cannot remember what it was. But they were all just kind of okay. You know, not great, not terrible. And I was honestly thinking of giving Colleen Hoover like a very long rest, of like not reading another one of her books for a while, but I had this book already, and so I figured I would give it a read, and that is November 9. So I had purchased this previously. It was just sitting on my bookshelf. It's not a long book, it's really short. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna give this one a go, and then I'll kind of like give Colleen Hoover a rest for a while, because even though I don't dislike her books, they're intriguing enough that I keep picking them up. I'm just not finding one that I really love. And then I absolutely fell in love with this book. I freaking love this book. This was so, so good. There was towards the end, there was a little bit of like the back and forth that was like frustrating, but I'm trying to kind of see it from the main characters' perspectives. I think the idea of the book is really interesting. I liked the idea of the book a lot, and I did really like the characters. Yes, some of them, well, they made some decisions that were a little iffy on me here or there, but overall, this just totally grabbed me, and I really, really loved it. And it definitely made me want to pick up another Colleen Hoover, which I was like, dang it, I was going to give her a long rest. But after reading this, I was like, ooh, okay, maybe I need to read another one of her books. And if you're sensing a trend here, a trend developed in the month of August, and I ended up giving this book 5 stars. Yes, 5 stars. We are 3 books into the month of August, and I have 3 5-star reads already. Next, we have a book that I've actually had for a while. I've had this for months and months and months. It's just been sitting on my bookshelf. I picked it up at Target randomly. I was there for something else, went and looked through the book section and saw this and picked it up, and just hadn't gotten around to reading it. And I finally got around to reading it, and that is The Charm Offensive. I didn't know what I was in for, but I immediately was super sucked into it. I watched The Bachelor for a very, very, very long time. I watched The Bachelor from when it first started, the first season with Alex, Michelle, and I watched it all the way through, every season of The Bachelor, every season of The Bachelorette, up until very recently. I never really watched the spin-off shows. I know there was Bachelor Pad. I did kind of like that one. I did watch, I think, 1 season of that, and then more recently they've had the Bachelor in Paradise shows, which I've never watched. But I've always watched The Bachelor. I've always watched The Bachelorette. I can't remember what the last season was that I watched, though. Might have been Tasia's season. That might have been the last one that I watched, or maybe The Bachelor that came after her. But I haven't watched the last few. I think The Bachelor and Bachelorette have lost their hold on me. They're just a little bit, I just kind of have to roll my eyes at them a little bit now. It's just a little But this book is very much centered around a similar situation. It's a fictionalized, basically, version of The Bachelor, where you have your two main characters. One works as a production assistant on the show, and the other is the lead in the show. And it is a just lovely read, really interesting read. It is a romance. It is just, there's a lot of like self-discovery, or like admitting to oneself, like things that we're maybe afraid to admit to ourselves at times, or nervous to admit to ourselves, and people being afraid to kind of like dive into a romance, or let go of the fear of getting hurt in a relationship. And I really, really, really love this. It was so, so good. I was like, why hadn't I read this already? It's sitting on my shelf for forever. Super, super glad that I picked it up. And this was a 5-star read for me. So we are now 4 books into the month, 4 5-star reads. Definitely not how I expected the month to go, but I was like so freaking excited at this point in the month that I ended up picking up something that's been on my shelf for a little bit. Not long, maybe a month or so, but an author that I feel I always enjoy her books, and that is Sophie Kinsella. This book here, Love Your Life, I purchased it not that long ago. It's been sitting on my shelf. I genuinely purchased it because the cover I thought looks like Italy, and I've said many times on this channel, if anything like looks like it's taking place in Italy or says Italy in the title, I'm in. And this did, the first part of this book, the first little bit of this book did take place in Italy. The character does go on vacation there for a week. It's like a retreat. And that's where she meets her love interest. It is a very interesting read about like these two characters who fall for each other but don't know anything about each other, because they fall for each other on vacation, and realizing that they actually live near each other and they're going to try to make this thing work, and then seeing how different their lives are and how different they are when they're in the midst of their lives and not like in a fantasy land on vacation. It was really an interesting read. I don't know why, but this one made me like super emotional, and I wasn't really expecting that. But as I got on reading the book, like towards the end where you kind of have everything coming to a head and these characters are really trying to figure out what the heck they're gonna do, it was emotional. It was like emotional for me for some reason, and I ended up really loving the ending, and it was another 5-star read for me. I can't believe that, but it was. Next, I picked up a book that I just recently purchased, and I've mentioned this in, I think, my previous book haul when I purchased this book, how I have definitely seen this on Instagram a bunch of times, not so much talked about on YouTube here, but have seen some of the gals that I follow on Instagram who are in the planner community have read this and have really liked it. And so I wanted to pick it up pretty quickly, and that is Weather Girl. Yeah, so this one was really, really cute. This was also a book that kind of dealt with like familial relationships, family trauma in a sense, past trauma, dealing with trauma. It deals with depression. It deals with deciding to go to therapy. It deals with being vulnerable in a relationship. It deals with that fear of being vulnerable in a relationship. I really, really liked this. This was very, very sweet. There was, I guess towards the end, a little bit from my perspective of an overreaction on one of the characters' parts. That was a little bit frustrating. But in the end, I was very pleased with the way that the book turned out. I did really like the main characters, and I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. So it did break my 5-star streak, but it by no means was a disappointing book. This was a really, really great book. And the last book that I have read, and I'm actually filming this on the 28th. So I'm not going to say this is the last book I'm reading this month, because what happened in July. But this is the last book I have read so far in August, and it is a new release. It is Love on the Brain by Hazelwood. I really liked The Love Hypothesis. I enjoyed that book a lot, and so when I saw that Hazelwood was coming out with another book, I definitely wanted to pick it up right away and read it right away. This is one of those new releases that I was anticipating for this year and excited about, so I picked this up, and I ended up diving into it pretty quickly. It came out, I think, on the 23rd, and I picked it up I started reading it on the 25th or something. And so I read this in 2 days. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I actually think I liked it. I did. I know I did. I liked it more than The Love Hypothesis. I really did like The Love Hypothesis though. But this one I love this one so much. I love the two main characters. I think they're really sweet. There's a lot of different things going on. There's like an unrequited love situation. There's like a forced proximity situation. There's, workplace romance kind of a vibe. There's like enemies to lovers, but it's not really enemies to lovers. I just really love this. And also too, like being someone who's in healthcare, which is obviously an offshoot of, which is a science, and being somebody who went to school for biology and loved being immersed in science. I just really love that Hazelwood's books are kind of focused in that. Her first book was about, a gal who was getting her PhD, and so she's in school, and it was like kind of not a dark academia, but almost like a romance academia book. And this one, the characters are not in school, but they work in the science field. They work for NASA. One is an engineer and the other is a neuroscientist. So I really appreciate that about her books. It makes them even more exciting for me to read. I want her next book to come out now because I would read it now. And this was a 5-star read for me. In the month of August, I read 7 books for sure, potentially 8. Not a huge reading month for me, but man, quality over quantity, right? I mean, out of the 7 books that I read, 6 of them were 5-star reads. How insane is that? Like, I was not anticipating that whatsoever when I was picking up these books. I was really hoping I was going to love Hook, Line, and Sinker, and I did. And that just kind of started the month out the right way, honestly. I had no way of anticipating if I'd like any of the other books that I read. And I just loved all of them so much. Even The Weather Girl, which I only rated 4.5 stars. I mean, that is such a good rating still, and I really, really enjoyed that book. So this is by far like the best reading month for me in terms of highest rated books. I've definitely had a bunch of months that I've read more books, but I've not had any type of other month where I have this many 5-star reads. Generally, I'm gonna have like 1 or 2 5-star reads in a month. I think there's been a couple times where I've had 3, but I've never had more than that, I don't think. And this is, I'm just like, I can't believe that I had that many 5-star reads this month. So I'm really, really hoping that September is good too. I don't think September is going to be like this, but I'm hoping that I'm able to stumble into a couple of really, really good books. I don't know if there's anything new released coming out in September. I want to say Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid is coming out soon. That might be in September. So I'll have to look into that. And that's definitely something that I do want to pick up and read when it comes out. So yeah, we'll see where September takes me. But August was an awesome reading month for me. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you want to share any of your spoiler-free thoughts about these books, don't hesitate to put a comment down below. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.